2018 of the High Springs Community Redevelopment Agency meeting. I didn't ask you, but Ms. Hall, would you be willing to do the invocation for us? Thank you. So if you'll join me with the invocation and then the Pledge of Allegiance.
Father, we thank you for this day, and we thank you for allowing us to gather together tonight to conduct city business. We ask that you would lead us and guide us as we embark upon the obligations that we are so duly committed to. I pray that you would lead us and guide us, and that we would be serious about what we're doing, and that we take these obligations that we have before us, that's going to be presented before us tonight, with loyalty and commitment, and that we do the very best that we can. I pray that we work together as a group, and that there'll be no division, only unity. I pray tonight that we have a very successful meeting. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jenny, will you do roll call, please?
Chair Lavin.
I'm here.
Vice Chair James.
Here.
Member Williams.
Here.
Member Tennyson will be absent. Member Jones.
Here.
Okay, and then approval of the agenda. Christina sent something to us and asked us to add an amendment to the agenda. So if we will do that, I guess, as item 8. Is that where we want to put it? Item 8 on the agenda? Okay, so item 8, she wants us to review and approve the go ahead, Christina, tell us what you want us to do.
To approve and authorize the city manager to execute the contract. We've already had an approval on this. Tonight we have a budget amendment. This is actually the contract that goes along with all of it.
Okay, thank you. So we'll add that. So if anybody would please make a motion.
All right, I will make a motion that the agenda be adjusted to include item number 8, as just explained by Christine, and otherwise it's approved as printed.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. And approval of the minutes from the June 21st, 2018 CRA meeting.
Okay, again, I will make a motion that the minutes from the CRA meeting of June 21st be approved as printed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. So the first item of business tonight is to swear in the members of the Douglas Advisory Board, and we're going to do that swearing in first and then recess for the sunshine so that one of the members can go to another meeting obligation. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Parham.
Can I ask a question before you do that? Yes. Are you going to do them one by one, or are you just going to do them as a group?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you give them a few minutes, you can do them one by one.
I was going to have her do them one by one and get you out of here.
No, I have a few minutes.
Okay. 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 So I guess we'll just wait.
I could actually swear in this book and
Okay.
See, it's like the same thing. Yeah, he's on here. He's on the list.
There's more than one person that's not here. Miss Dixon's not here.
Miss Dixon is here.
Oh, is she? I didn't see you come in.
Yeah, there she is.
You're hiding back there.
And what's with Elder James?
Jim, he has vacation Bible school.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
So we'll all sit quietly in a moment of silence.
And JR, I see you tonight.
Yes, sir. You see me, man. I didn't want to hide behind nobody.
That's right.
You can come right up here.
I didn't tell you that we got in with jail.
Thank you so much.
You can sit behind Jessica, I couldn't see it. Hello. How you doing? Good.
Attorney Walker, we started the meeting and we're waiting for a couple of members of the advisory board to come so she can swear all of them in at one time, and then we'll take the recess to do the sunshine.
Perfect.
Okay?
Sounds like a plan. Good evening, everybody.
I saw where you introduced the new attorney the other night. I was watching it online, but I don't remember.
Okay. Would you like us to redo that again?
Not the whole thing,
Not
just
the whole thing? Give you the abbreviated version? Rich Maltby.
see, I did remember.
That's right. So you got that right.
Yes.
We're very sad to lose Courtney. We're glad to lose her to the job that she's taken down in Orlando. That we're real pleased about that. That's one of the bigger law firms in the Southeast,
Yeah.
Greenberg Traurig. She's going into the public finance sector of that law firm, so she's kind of keeping with the municipal local government work, but it's bond funding or loan funding for municipalities. So it's a big step for her and a big plus for her career. Doesn't change the fact that we don't want to lose her. That's right.
That's right.
But having said that, Rich has come on to our law firm about four months ago. I've known Rich for a couple of years. He came down from Missouri. He was in a mid-sized firm, about 25 people up in Springfield, Missouri. Came out of St. Louis, worked for the biggest law firm in the country or in the world. It's called Sun and Shine. It's a different name now.
It's Denton's now. They merge and merge again. Become bigger and bigger and more powerful.
Oh my gosh.
Now, when you work for those big firms, you're kind of a cog in a wheel, in my opinion. So he recognized that and moved to Springfield for a 20-person firm there, and then came down to UF to get a degree in tax law. So he got his master's. They call it an LLM. It's a master's degree in taxation. Florida has a tremendous school in taxation. They have the University of New York. NYU has a tremendous tax program, and then Florida. So they're always battling back and forth who's the best tax school. And so Florida has a national reputation in taxation. So he came to Florida, got his degree there, and the wife said, well, I'm not taking the two daughters back to Missouri. I want to stay here in Gainesville.
Well,
So
that says a lot.
the wife, you can see, she's a smarty.
That's
The
right.
wife is a smarty.
Ice storms versus hurricanes.
Exactly. You can sure plan on the hurricane.
That's right. So he worked for a local law firm for about a year, and I've kept track of him all that time, and said, hey, why don't you come over and work with us? And that was before we knew Courtney was leaving. So it really was timing-wise was beneficial in that way, and I had wanted Rich to come into local government work anyway. So that's the background, and that's who that is. And so he's getting his feet wet. We went down to the Florida Municipal Attorneys Association conference last week down in Key Biscayne, and so he's immersed in municipal work now.
That's right. Very, very much enjoying it. It's been
One thing
fun.
I'll say this about Rich. This is indicative of Rich. You know, he moved down here from Missouri, and he has a substantial amount of his clients that still talk to him, and he works for those clients in the state of Missouri. He's licensed in Missouri and Illinois and Florida. And so he's still, and as a matter of fact, he had a trial that was scheduled in September, but that just got continued in federal court up there. So I think that tells you a lot about Rich, is that his clientele, even though he's moved to Florida, have said, we want to keep you on as our counsel.
Yeah.
So, and I've been doing all the talking about Rich now, so I'll turn it over to him to talk a little bit.
Well, I appreciate that introduction, but no, I've enjoyed working with Courtney, getting to know her the last 3 or 4 months. So I'm sad for myself to see her go. I know how valuable she's been to High Springs and all of her clients. So it's a loss for us, but and we've got some shoes to fill. But at the same time, I'm very excited for the opportunity. And as Scott mentioned, I really enjoyed going down to the municipal law conference last week and getting fully immersed into it. A lot of my background in the past has been a lot of construction and real estate, of course the taxes Scott mentioned. And so there's no question that those same practice areas are very relevant to the municipal world. So I look forward to putting all that to use.
Very good. Well, it's nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you too. Well, actually, I'm glad you brought that up because I factored that in.
Yes.
My parents they have a beautiful little condo on a lake right down there next to Silver Dollar City. So we factored that in. We shuffle our 2 girls up there, and they spend a lot of time there too. So we wouldn't give that up.
You know, I was down the road with Leonard Wood.
Yes, absolutely. The military base.
I was there for about 2 years.
Okay.
That was quite a while. Please do.
So it might be a...
Okay, everyone is raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, John Andrews,
Do solemnly swear that I will support, honor, protect, and defend the Constitution and government of the United States and of the state of Florida, that I am duly qualified to hold office under the Constitution of the state and under the charter of the city of High Springs, and that I will well and faithfully perform the duties of the Douglas Neighborhood Advisory Board member, on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
I'm happy. No, I am. No, I am. Is it one of them? Yes. No, I'm listening to the last 4 tapes. Oh, no, this is the CRA.
We work really well. My parents said we can do sports today, so he's having a lot of fun.
Thank you, Miss Andrews. Bye-bye. Okay, so we'll recess the meeting at this point so that the attorney can do the Sunshine Law presentation for the members that have not had the opportunity to do that before, and then we'll resume the meeting after that presentation.
Yeah, this doesn't count as the 4 hours.
That's correct. This is going to be about a 10-minute thing as opposed to the 4-hour thing. So it's a much different presentation. Now we will have a 4-hour before the end of the year. Every year, elected officials and public officials and people that serve on boards, they have to go to a training about ethics and public record laws. And so you're taking the oath that you just did comes with certain rights but also responsibilities. And so those responsibilities under Florida law are pretty big. It's a big deal. And Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I'll
Yeah.
talk directly to the members of the advisory board. Back in the early 70s, I think it was 1972, Reuben Askew said, look, we've had the pork chop gang up in the Panhandle. I don't know if you remember, there was a number of legislatures up in the Panhandle that ruled Florida. And the way deals were done were the pork chop gang members would get together, and that's what they were actually called, pork chop gang. And they would get together and they say, okay, we're going to send this money over here to your jurisdiction. Okay, well then I want this much. And they did a lot of backroom deals, and that's how it worked in Florida. And so he convened a constitutional revision commission, was one of his ideas, and one of the other things was public records and sunshine law. So it dates back to the Reuben Askew era. That's where this all comes from. And there's a statute in Florida. It's 119, and it's a detailed statute. And if you're ever can't sleep at night and want to read that kind of thing, it'll put you right to sleep. And it seems kind of complex when you put it all together, but I'm going to try to simplify it for you and just make it a real simple rule. And really, at the heart of it, it is real simple. And that is, when you're on this commission, or you're a public official or an appointee of an advisory board, if one of the board members comes up to you and says, you know, hey, I think we ought to vote like this tonight at this evening's meeting. Let's vote this way. If you do that kind of thing and you engage in discussions outside of the public meeting, then that's when you'll get into trouble. And so the public records law and the sunshine law says that all of your work has to be done at a public meeting, like tonight. For instance, we've got our agenda. It's been posted. Miss Jenny goes out and puts it on the front board out there. It's posted in the bulletin board. It's posted at the post office. It's available online. Everybody knows there's a meeting at the CRA this evening at 5:30. And these are the areas that we're going to be discussing tonight. So if I'm a citizen and I want to know what's going on about this, then I have a right to attend and be present and talk about those things. And your deliberations are based upon what happens at that meeting. So you hear what the information is, and you're making a decision based upon what's happening in that meeting and not in some backroom deal. That's what this is all about. And so if somebody comes up to you and says, that's on the board, and says, hey, how about if we vote this way? That's where you get into trouble. And remarkably, the trouble happens when you least expect it. And I've seen situations personally where somebody comes up and puts a recorder. You don't know you're being recorded. And if you're in a public place where there's no expectation of being recorded, and there's a recording of you talking about something that you're going to vote on, then all of a sudden that could be a problem. And so things happen in a way that, now thank goodness we don't have that kind of situation here in High Springs. People are congenial, and I think they're trying to do the right thing. And I've seen this kind of stuff tear through a community, and it really makes for hard feelings when neighbors are starting to do things like that. But what I would tell you is, if somebody comes up to you that's a member on your board and starts talking to you, and you're governed by the sunshine law just like everybody else is here, what you do is say, that's on the agenda for tonight. Can't talk about it. We'll talk about it tonight, and politely decline to engage in the discussion. And that's your obligation, and that's your responsibility. And to do otherwise will get you into trouble. Now, if you violate the sunshine law and you do that kind of discussion, and then there's a vote, and if it's found out about, then the penalty for that, there can be problems for you individually. You can get removed from your official position. That's one thing that can happen. Another thing is that whatever we do can be undone. So it is, in the law, we call it becomes void. So there's some pretty stiff and heavy penalties for doing it outside the sunshine. There's exceptions to that. The exceptions are if we're in litigation and we call a meeting, that I can have the counsel, I can talk to you in what we call a shade meeting. So that'd be one exception. Now everything that's said has to be written down by a court reporter, and there's only certain people in the statute that can attend that kind of meeting. So that would be one exception. If I want to know Antoine's his address, or if somebody files a public record request asking for his address, he's a police officer and he doesn't have to give his home address, or a firefighter. So there's certain specific exceptions to the public records and sunshine law. But for the most part, everything on this table, all these papers, if I write a little note to Christina and I pass it to her and somebody came up and said, hey, I want to see what's on that note, that's a public records. So if you pass a note while you're deliberating. Now, if my wife sends me a note and says, pick up a loaf of bread and some eggs and milk on the way home, that's not a public record. That has nothing to do with our official capacity. But almost everything else, in fact, a lot of the things that the attorney, usually there's an attorney-client privilege, but even those kind of things will be subject many, many, many times to the sunshine law. Now, the other thing that I would caution you about is that in this day and time, we do a lot of business on these kind of things and this kind of thing. And so whatever we're texting between each other, and this they call it TextGate, came out of Orlando, and the city council down there, the city council people, when something would come up on a presentation, and then the council members were texting each other, and they were saying, "Oh, that's a dumb idea," or they're being critical about it. And somebody saw them texting and said, "Hey, I want to see a copy of those texts." And the judge said, "Those are public record. It's electronic, but it's a public record." And then the commissioner said, "Oh, well, I lost my phone. That phone fell in the toilet. That phone mysteriously got destroyed all of a sudden." And of course, the judge wasn't having any of it, and those commissioners got into trouble. And the bad part about it is that it cost the city of Orlando, and I cannot remember the number, but it was like $750,000 in attorney's fees, because when an attorney grabs hold of something like that and they're right about it, then they get their attorney's fees paid for them. So those are the kind of things that it not only, the bottom line is it hurts your city. So Miss Jenny is really, really good about getting public records requests out. So when something comes in, if somebody asks you for something, they don't have to go to Miss Jenny. They could come to you as a member of the board and say, "I want a copy of this. I want to see what you wrote on here. I want to see what this is all about." Then you got to take it to Miss Jenny, and then she'll respond. She's our collector of public records. That's one of her main responsibilities as our city clerk, and she has to respond in a reasonable time to public records requests. So if there's something that goes on at the meeting, now the city's responsibility, Mr. Booth's responsibility to you all, is to provide you staff. So when you meet and you're doing your deliberations and you're having presentations and you're thinking about things that are going on and deciding what it is, the city provides you somebody to take the records. And so somebody from the city manager staff will be there to do that and take minutes of the meetings. So the requirements of the public records law is it has to be a duly noticed meeting. It has to be open to the public. It has to be accessible to the public, ADA accessible. It has to be not in a place. There was something that came up about 2 years ago, and they were going to have a little meeting and a reception for the commissioners in the top of the great outdoors. And Mr. Booth said it very appropriately, "Well, wait a minute, I don't think it's ADA compliant. Not everybody in the public can be there. We're not going to do that. We cannot do that." And the same goes for you all. When you meet, you have to meet, and typically you're going to meet in the city hall, would be my anticipation. So you notify Jenny, Mr. Booth, what's going on, and you say, "We're going to meet on this date and this time." That way they can post it to the public. It has to be noticed. is posted, and then you have city staff there available to create the record of what went on, which is the minutes of the meeting. If you meet those requisites, you're fine on the public records law and the public meeting requirements. And then if you stay away from having conversations with each other, then you're going to be just fine. Now, having said all that, we're a small town. We're a congenial place. If you see somebody up at Bev's restaurant and you sit down and say, how are you doing? How's the wife? How's the kids? You know, those kind of things. That's not a violation of the public records law. You get to do that. You don't have to stay away from each other. The law does not envision that. If you're talking about things that are going to be on the agenda and things you're going to vote on to recommend to this body, that's where you can't do that side of it. So that's really in a nutshell presentation. That's what your public records law is all about. That's what your sunshine law. If you'll follow those guidelines, walk away if somebody comes to you and says, you know, hey, I want to talk about our vote tonight. Now, one other thing, if your constituents come to you, if members of the public that are not on your board come to you and say, hey, I want, I think the Douglas neighborhood should include this property as well, or you know, something like that, the law envisions you to be able to talk to your people that are in that neighborhood or have an opinion. I can't be at the meeting, and the person I'm pretending to be is not a member of your board, okay? So I come up to you and I say, look, I think that this set of houses should be in the Douglas neighborhood CRA, just like this other set that you all are thinking about doing it. That's okay, because that's not a member of the board, and that's somebody giving you some of their opinion. And then at the meeting you say, I talked to Mr. Smith, and he said he wanted this set of 10 houses to be included in the Douglas neighborhood, and here's the reason why. And so you disclose it. You say, this is what one of our constituents indicated they wanted to say. That's not a violation of the public records law, because Mr. Smith is not on your board, okay? So that's how this works. That's the requirements, and our chair, Madam Chair, wanted me to impart that to you so that we had immediate knowledge. Since you're now involved in this thing, there's the responsibilities that go with it, and she wanted to give a brief primer on that basis. So if that's where I was going to ask, are there any questions? Go ahead.
Attorney Walker, quick question. You referenced the discussion of amid the members advisory board members concerning items that may be in the board agenda, vote items to be voted on, not having worked with the proper sunshine law, but how does this refer to items that have previously been discussed, has been made on the public record, have been on the agenda, voted on already, been decided, whatever? Are those items also often among members?
You know, it's really not, because you've brought it up, it's been voted on, and it's done, and so really not. But my advice to you would be, and since we're here, let me make this point. The city attorney's office, myself and Rich, you have our access to us. So if you have a question about something, I want you to call us. I don't want you to think, oh, that's the attorney's office, I can't bother them. My legal assistant's name is Lisa. Beth is his legal assistant's name. Our number, you know, I don't think I got any cards on me right now. Maybe Rich does, but you all are welcome to contact us if you have a question. I don't want you laboring over a question and feel like you don't have anywhere to turn. That's what our function is to do that. Now, what my advice, let's pretend that you just called me on that question. What I would say to you is, I would recommend not talking to that other board member about that issue, because it may come back up. It might be something that you deliberate down the road on somebody that there's Robert's Rules of Order we can talk about another time, but let's say for whatever reason that particular issue comes back onto your consideration, and then all of a sudden now that conversation between you becomes a little bit more close to being aligned with public records. So I'd just say, if it has anything to do with the business that was there, even if you voted on in the past, I would say just to err on the side of caution and say, look, why don't we talk about that at the next meeting that we've got? Let's put that on the agenda. You have some questions about it. I'm happy to reconsider it. That's been something we've already decided, but maybe we do need to reconsider that. And that's how I would suggest to handle that, because you're erring on the side of caution then. Is there any other questions that you've got that you may have out there? But again, I know the city clerk's office, your city manager's office, your city attorney's office, we're your constitutional officers under your charter. The door is open. It's not, we're an inclusionary city here, and that's how our community is, and that's the whole purpose of your being on this advisory board. I think there's some marvelous ideas, marvelous things that are happening right now in the city, and that's your purpose in being here, and that's our purpose in being here.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
If they're the advisory board for the Douglas community, and then we are the CRA board, so can they talk to us, or should they not discuss? Is that a violation of sunshine law?
It's not a violation for you to talk to a separate board. So it's your board is what we're talking about. That's where the violation would occur, is if you're talking to members of your board. You can talk to Miss Nancy. That's okay, and that's not a violation. But just be careful about it. It's just my suggestion is be a bit careful about it. There's probably not much that needs to be done there that couldn't be done in an advisory board capacity. Now, will you be attending all the advisory board meetings as well? Do you anticipate that, or how do you?
I would imagine we would be part of that process.
So many times there's a liaison between boards, and so the likelihood is that whatever you have to impart can be done in a public meeting. But if it's just not working and you need to get some message to one of the CRA members so they can
choose a board member to be part of their as a liaison. Okay. Should we put that on as an agenda for?
I think that wouldn't be a bad idea for the next meeting.
This board. Okay.
To have somebody there, and that way you're getting all the information firsthand and can report back to the CRA and that sort of thing. So that's all. It never hurts to do that.
Okay. And then just so they know that you can talk to any staff member. That's not a violation. You can talk to any staff member, whether it's Ms. Wright or anybody that's on staff. You can go to them if you have questions or concerns or need to talk about something, right?
That's exactly right. And the idea of a backroom vote, somebody that has the ability to, I don't have a vote. Mr. Booth doesn't have a vote. Ms. Jenny doesn't have a vote. That's where the violation comes in, is when you have somebody that is capable of voting that you're doing a backroom deal on. That's where the problem is. So that you can talk to me in private. That's what your attorney does.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you have any questions? Anybody have questions for the attorney? We've got him as a captive audience, so. And feel free to reach out because their office is very good. I email them and text and call and ask questions a lot. So thank you very much.
There will be, Mr. Booth talked about it, there will be another ethics training seminar. That's something that we do for the various cities you're welcome to come to that. So we'll give you notice when that's going to be. The advisory boards, the planning and zoning board, the other boards that we have, and our city commission is welcome to come to that. Typically, our office tries to get some pizza or something because it's a 4-hour proceeding, and so you get your certification before the end of the year, and you can do that through us. You can do it through Florida League of Cities. You don't have to come to that. There's other, we try to make it real easy for you all to get your yearly certification. We'll be doing that sometime in the fall. Either I'll be doing it or Rich will be doing it, maybe both of us will be doing it. So you're welcome to get that, and you'll hear a little bit more in depth and examples of what goes on. And I'll be honest with you, it's gotten a little bit far from probably what Ruben asked you and what he envisioned. For instance, I think it was the Seminole School Board that they said they wanted to go and visit school sites around their district to see where the next school should be placed. And so they got on the bus, and all the school board members were on the bus, and they went around, but it wasn't open to the public. And they took the precaution. They said, the school board members said, okay, you sit here, you sit 3 seats back here, you sit over here. So the members were not even in the same proximity with each other, so they could not talk outside the sunshine. And it was an investigatory, an educational thing that they were doing. And the law said, there was a court case that was brought about that instance, and they said that violates the Sunshine Law. And it went up on appeal to the 5th DCA, and the 5th DCA affirmed the trial judge that was a violation. Now, to me, that's a little bit beyond what I think, what is envisioned by the law. But it's just a point that if it's a close question, or maybe not even a close question, the Sunshine Law is so strong. We have the strongest laws in this area in the entire country. The Public Records Law and the Sunshine Law in the state of Florida, they're going to rule in favor of the Sunshine Law and the public record. That's where we're at in our society. So you just have to be very careful under this section of the law.
Thank you.
Question.
Sure.
Jenny, since the advisory board now, don't they have to fill out that financial?
Not a decision.
Okay.
We have several advisory boards that are not
Okay.
and board
Okay. But the reason I asked that question is
they're not really required.
okay. That was a question I asked. Because if you had to fill out that statement, you have to have that training. Okay.
That's a good question. I didn't realize that.
He's right.
So, okay, any further questions? Okay. Jenny, I know 2 more members came in while we were doing this. Do you want to go ahead and swear them in now so that we can then resume the rest of the meeting? I don't believe that Elder James is going to be able to make it this evening. So it would be Mr. Durr and Mr. Wilson that came in.
Perform the duties of the Douglas Neighborhood Advisory Board member, on which I am now about to enter the swear.
Need some mud.
Christina, do you want to discuss a liaison tonight or put that on the agenda? Oh. There you go. For a chairperson, but a liaison too, you want to add that? Okay. Someone from this board to be the liaison, okay. Okay, is anybody interested in doing that? Okay. You were in this from the beginning, so if you would be willing, that would be wonderful. I want to thank all of you personally on behalf of the city and this board. We don't pay you nearly enough to do this, and you take your time to make sure that we have some idea of what you want your community to look like, and that's really important that you've stepped forward. And I'm so excited that we have so many people that are willing and ready to help us figure out how to make change there. So thank you so much. Elder James can't make it tonight, and we'll get him sworn in when we have the first meeting. So if we have no more questions or discussion about the Sunshine Law or
I
swear.
have a comment.
Okay.
When you're done.
Yes, ma'am. Go right ahead.
I'm like you. I would like to say thank you to each of you for being willing to take on this function. I think it's going to be a very good set of meetings with you. You're a diverse group looking at the different backgrounds there, and it's something that you didn't have to do. We recognize that fact. But I am very glad that you did, because I know you're going to come up with a good plan for us that we all are going to be proud of. And I'm sort of looking forward to seeing what you come up with. Again, I thank you for doing what you're doing.
Commissioner Williams?
Well, I was going to say thank you, and as I look out there, everybody a part of that community, know the community, and that's what makes it different. And I say thank you for stepping up, because it's hard to get people to serve on board. So thank you, Raymond, Pat, Jessica, John, Raymond. What's your name, Phil? And Ron. Thank y'all so much.
JR, I think we've been picking on you ever since you decided to join.
Sit out here where you can see me. Let me one thing. You like me.
Commissioner Jones?
I would like to add my thanks as well. Such a large group, it's surprising that you can get that many people to be on an advisory board. So, and meetings we have to attend, we know it can be quite encumbering. So, thank you very much.
Any other questions or discussion before we resume the meeting? Okay, so we'll resume the regular meeting. And number 2 is nomination of a Douglas Advisory Board chairperson. So that would be somebody within their group to chair their meeting. And then we'd like to go ahead and add to that a liaison from this board to the Douglas Advisory Board. So, yes. Okay, good idea. Okay, so a chair, a vice chair, and then a liaison from our board to your advisory board. So I guess what we'll do is ask if there's any motions from within your advisory board on someone that you feel would be a good chair. We'll start with the chairperson position, and you can make a motion and or second if there's anybody that you'd like to put forward.
That's a question for you, move on, Scott.
Yeah.
So, do they have to, I want to say that, have a meeting? So is it to elect the chairperson? I'm thinking they need to have a meeting where they open up and, if I'm correct, that's actually the question.
In their first meeting,
Yeah, I'm just wondering, can they just sit out there in the audience and say, we want to nominate so-and-so without having a meeting?
What they should really have an organizational meeting.
Yeah.
I would suggest calling the meeting, and then and I think Ms. Jenny's correct about that too, that, have a chairperson and a vice chair. Now, I do think you can say who you want to have as a liaison in this meeting. I think that's fine to do. But I think that they should have a duly called meeting. I think that would make sense.
So we should set up their first meeting date or coordinate that with them, and at that time, then they can choose a chairperson and a vice chairperson.
That's right.
Okay.
Now, it can be right before this meeting. You can meet in conjunction with this group, but I think that does make some sense to do it.
Okay. And we would want one of the attorneys present at their advisory board meetings?
We're happy to do that. A lot of times we're not at
Okay.
advisory. You need to have a staff member there
Okay.
to take the minutes. I don't know if that'll be Christina or who it might be, but you do have to, at a minimum, you need to have that.
So it would be better if we could coordinate it with another meeting, just because it would not put a burden on staff and/or the attorney, correct? If that works with their schedule.
That's beyond my scope, really. But
Okay.
yes, I think that would make some sense.
I think that would be the best way to handle it. And that way you're not inconveniencing anybody on either board.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So is Thursday night a time that you could meet, and could you do that before our regular CRA meeting, which might be at 5:30 if we're starting at 6:30, which would give you an hour? Or if you didn't have a lot to discuss, it could be, like the first meeting where you're just trying to identify the chair. It might only be a half an hour meeting, and then you could set up dates for future meetings and discuss how much time you would need. Would that work for the members on this board? We need some input on how and when might be suitable for you.
You say Thursday night?
Right.
First Thursday.
I believe that they're trying to get the CRA meeting on the third Thursday.
Well, because of August with the Hollywood.
Right. So in August, it's going to be on August 2nd, but then we're trying to get it so that once a month on the third Thursday, we'll have the CRA board meeting, so that we have a date already and people don't have to guess when we're meeting, that we're just having it on a regular time frame, and can have an additional meeting if we need to, but it's not like it has been where we make a meeting date at each meeting for the next one. So, go ahead.
With the exception of maybe also September, because being that we have GAI now, and we want to get them, that way we can meet with the county commission maybe by the end of September.
Okay.
It might be good to set first for.
So would it be better to do it in front of a commission meeting, because that might be more stable right now with the things you have going on?
No, I think
Okay.
just for the sake of the next two before the fiscal year begins, if we could do the first, and that way if we need a workshop, we still have that third one available.
Okay.
Or we also could do it with a commission meeting if there's a smaller item to go.
So for the next few months, 2 or 3 months, the first Thursday of the month, and then potentially the third Thursday of the month. But again, you could set a meeting date at your first meeting after you figure out what your schedule is that would work for the benefit of the majority of your members, right? So if we could get some feedback whether you could do that on August 2nd. There is a CRA meeting scheduled at 6:30 on August 2nd. That's the first Thursday in August. Is that something that would work for the majority of the members that are here tonight?
It would work for me, the first Thursday, August 2nd.
Okay,
It probably should take us too long, maybe 30 minutes.
okay,
It wouldn't work for me, but it's okay because it works for the majority.
okay. So at that meeting, we would discuss a chairperson, a vice chairperson, set up meeting dates going forward, and maybe start to establish, a direction. Is that, and you would be present at that meeting. So how long would you like to schedule it for? An hour? Like do it at 5:30?
If we could, for the sake of getting things established, a half hour would probably be fine. But if everyone would want to stay for the regular meeting, because I think it would be a good idea for us to begin to workshop the CRA plan while the funding and necessities being worked on.
Okay.
just to make sure we kind of keep ahead of the curve. That'll give us an extra meeting or two in September if we're going to meet with the county, maybe the end of September, like September 25th, they have a meeting.
Okay, so 6 o'clock, you think 6 o'clock for them to meet, establish your chair and vice chair, set their meeting dates, and then if you could stay for the CRA meeting, because the Douglas issues are going to be part of that discussion that night. Does that work for the majority of the people that are here tonight? Okay.
You can do that. Right. I think what the chairperson was saying is that they would have a meeting followed by this, and there would not be voting by the advisor board of that meeting. But if they intend to vote,
If they're meeting as a group and discussing things that's not a regular meeting, then
right.
it needs, in my opinion, it needs to be a joint meeting where they're free to discuss.
I agree. I agree. If they're sitting there just listening and not voting and that, I think they can do that. If there's a cross communication thing, then I think it needs to be a joint meeting. Right. I think that's what I'm sensing too.
So we would have the Douglas Advisory Board meeting at 6, and then the 6:30 meeting would be a joint meeting between the CRA Board and the Douglas Advisory Board.
If you want to meet together,
Okay.
they have to be joint meetings, but as a separate board, they don't always have to meet in the CRA meeting.
Right,
They
right.
can hold meetings during the day if they wanted to, or they can meet
Convenient
2 or
for
3
them.
times a week if they wanted to.
Okay.
And then have joint meetings with the board.
Okay. Okay, so can we set it up that way for that first meeting for August 2nd? We'll do from 6 to 6:30 is specifically the Douglas Advisory Board to set up. And then if you would stay for that joint meeting, and then going forward, you guys can figure out what's going to be the best schedule for your board, okay? All right. So we're gonna change that second thing on our agenda and table that until the Douglas Advisory Board meeting on August 2nd at 6 o'clock. But as an addition to that item on our agenda, I would like for our CRA board to make a motion and nominate someone to be a liaison from this board to the Douglas Advisory Board. So I wonder if there's a motion, if someone would like to make a motion, or if there's someone that would like to volunteer.
Let me ask you a question first. Now, this has not been on the agenda item. Can we?
Well, to be honest, in spirit, I meant liaison. I put chairperson, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'm
Okay.
thinking yes.
You want to get in trouble, just add the sunshine and all that.
You got it
They're gonna turn around
concerned
and-
now.
We're doing it in public, though. We're not doing it in private, okay?
And
So
that brings up a pretty good question. Even if something, now our rules of procedure for a city commission say that if it's not on the agenda, you're not supposed to deal with it. But the public records law does not restrict you from, if there's something on the agenda, you can amend your agenda, you can put something additional on the agenda. So for the purpose of this meeting, you can strike chairperson, put liaison, that's fine, and vote out.
okay. So do you want us to do that, then make a motion to strike chairperson and replace it with liaison?
I'm sorry, yes. Yes, that's right. I thought you were calling for a motion. Yeah.
No, I can't do the motion.
Yeah.
So
So
does
someone-
anyone want to make a motion?
I will. I will make a motion that the liaison person for the Douglas Neighborhood Committee be Commissioner Williams.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Are you okay with that, Commissioner Williams? That's good. I will say Commissioner Williams was involved with this 2-3 years ago when this first started being talked about, so he's got some history that the others of us don't necessarily have, and I'm very happy that you're willing to do that. Thank you. Okay. We do need to probably go ahead and just go ahead and have a motion to change this on the agenda, to change the word from chairperson to liaison, just so we have that all tidy, okay? So does someone want to make a motion to change?
I move that we change chairperson in item number 2 to liaison.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. So we did that a little backwards, but we did it, okay? All right, so we're going to get off number 2 now. Okay, we're going to, item number 3 on our agenda tonight is to discuss and determine requirements for the CRA grants. And I'm going to turn this over to Christina because...
Actually, I'm the one who put it on there, so
Okay.
I'd like to discuss the grants with the board.
Okay.
Having discussed this with the county manager, who was also the attorney when we negotiated, her idea is that they came to the agreement that they would allow us to have facade grants. A facade grant is a facade grant. It is the front of the building. It's not air conditioners, it's not roofs, or it's not building new buildings. And that seems to be what a lot of grants are for. What her recommendation was is that if we want to change that, we need to go back to the county board and ask them for permission to do that. They have more strings on our CRA than they have in any other CRAs. That's because that's the way we negotiate. And so we really don't want to get sideways with the county board at this time, because we have to renew this thing every 2 years, unlike any of the other CRAs. So that's really what I'm saying. Her other recommendation is, in this upcoming budget, we need to put more brick and mortar down instead of administrative and doing things. We need to put in parks, or we need to do sidewalks, not sidewalks, but do parking lots or whatever we need to do, but we need to do it. It needs to be brick and mortar, or something we can touch and feel.
So the grant applications that Christina's worked up have gotten more specific on what facade means.
Right.
Being painting, being awnings, externally lit signage, murals, and the other items on several of these is ADA accessibility, which would be like concrete ramps into the businesses, or street furniture that would accommodate the public in front of the businesses in the downtown CRA district.
I think that's all facade.
And that will, you feel like that will meet the...
I think that'll meet their requirements, even on homes, you know, that we have a lot of homes in the area, and the facade is really how they look in the front.
Okay.
I know there's a lot of grant applications that you have, but they don't meet the requirements at this time.
Okay.
I think if you want to do that, you probably need to go back to the county and say, we would like to expand the grant, the facade grant, to a construction grant or something other than that.
Okay. And so you've reviewed these applications for this new...
I've looked at them, yes.
Okay. I'll open it up for discussion on any of the applications. Any questions? We have 3 different applications that Christina has brought to us. One for the nonprofit paint only or facade improvement. One for the commercial facade grant application, and I believe there's one for the residential paint only. Yes.
Is there a cap of money or the number of houses that will
Based on the amount that we budget for, what kind of limit, so of course, commercial grants would be limited at 5,000. The residential and the nonprofits that choose to do paint only, like the residential, those are 500 apiece.
Right.
And so I did last year, I think we budgeted like 30,000. So, depending on the number of applications, I think that would cover it well. But I think with the number of projects that we have moving forward, I don't want us to be too grant heavy, but yet we still want to achieve you know, the facade improvements, because it is has a major impact on our downtown throughout the CRA. But yeah, so right now it's just limited by the amount that's budgeted and, you know, first come, first served since it is an open grant cycle.
I wonder if you could explain for us, you changed the nonprofit application to put some criteria for how they contribute to the community. Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, that was some, in the memo that I created for the workshop last time, we had some discussion. There was some discussion on whether we should treat them the same, and a lot of folks said that, you know, they thought that they should be treated the same. So seeing that, you know, a nonprofit is kind of like, you know, the in-between between, you know, the commercial and the residential. A lot of communities have like overall CRA criteria objectives, and if a nonprofit meets those, then they fund the project and or the facade, whatever the facade improvement would be. If it's just painting, of course, they don't need to establish, you know, we're doing community services or, you know, whatnot. But if they're going for the larger grant, they show, you know, whatever community, greater, you know, the public good that they're providing, that would allow them to be, you know, treated as the commercial, because of the discussions we've had about are they contributing to the tax base. But if they're contributing to the greater community, that's something else to take into consideration if we would choose to go that way.
Okay.
Otherwise.
So on the paint-only portion for the nonprofits, it would be limited to the same as what we're doing with the residential, and then there would also be an option for them to do the overall facade grant, which would be the commercial, similar to the commercial, but they would have to then show us how they contributed to the greater good of the community for us to go to that level of a commitment.
Yeah, like for example, we were talking about, you know, if organization had like a Boys and Girls Club or something like that, where, you know, there would be another way to assist that, to provide those overall needs. Otherwise, it's commercial, residential. And then, of course, we didn't want to exclude nonprofits.
Okay.
I have a couple questions too. I know there was some discussion at our last meeting on what would be the percentage of match for the applications. And I think we made the recommendation that the residential paint only would be a 50% match,
Yeah.
which is what we noted. But the other two are 100% match.
Yeah.
So we really didn't discuss that whatsoever, so we just left it at 100%.
Yeah, the facade. But the paint only, if the nonprofit did the paint only, well, even if a commercial could technically, I guess, do a paint only, but the way it is right now, yeah, the facade grant is 100% match, and that would still allow, we were talking about, you know, if there was somebody wanting to do their own project, maybe to make that go a little further. So it was a 50% match for the paint.
Right, for the paint only. Okay. Yeah, I noticed that, but the others said 100. So I was just wondering if there was something out of the ordinary that, okay. All right. I'm cool. I'm happy.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I have some questions. Okay. In here it says applicants are required to pressure wash during the painting. No, prior to painting.
Prior to painting.
What about if they find any wood damage or other structural damage to the house? A lot of these homes in the area are been around for a while, and when you pressure wash it, you find some issues. What does that mean?
Well, I think, you know, we were talking about the spirit of the overall grant process, and we wanted to incentivize these improvements. We know that it's not going to cover everything. So things like that would be left to the individual property owner, but still have that benefit of, you know, helping with the cost of materials.
For the $500, and so they might use that fix for the problem they have, and then you would have to go into their own, I guess, at that point, if it's more than $1,000.
Once they spend that $500, they're on their own.
I'm sorry?
Once they spend that $500, they're on their own pretty much.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That was my concern, is that we frequently find these issues with
Yes. I agree with you. I agree.
I did notice that you put in here for both of them that the paint ones that they must use local downtown businesses for purchasing the paint and the equipment. I feel that's a big step for us to support those businesses that are in our CRA district, and I think that's a great step for us to reinvest that money right into the businesses that are here in downtown, and then, you know, at least that money comes back into our businesses and pays for staff and employees here. Other questions, discussions?
I think you did a good job on developing these.
So when we do the commercial ones, they then have to go and do a certificate of appropriateness after they apply for the grant? Is that the process?
If it's a historical structure, but with painting, it's a little bit different. Like, as long as they're not doing structural work, we're pretty safe. But we can look at that more closely just to make sure there's nothing that's...
Right, because if they're just painting,
Yeah.
you know, if they're not changing anything. So they would come to you with the grant application, apply for the grant, show what they want to do, and then at that point, after it's approved, then they can do that next step if that needs to be done.
Yeah.
If certificate of appropriate.
That would be done beforehand. But and then as part of this, like since some of the things that we've had here in the past few months, I think it's a good idea. I'll be happy to do a staff report that just kind of, you know, gives a quick summary and says how it meets our criteria, and that way, you know, there isn't some of the ambiguities that we've had in the past.
Okay.
That should be pretty.
So you will do a staff report when you present it to us for approval?
Oh, I'd have to.
Okay.
Okay.
Another question, please. I'm sorry I was not at the meeting, but I watched it online. And I'm trying to get closer to the mic because sometimes you can't hear what's going on. I think I probably forgot my question. I'll think of it. Sorry.
What's she thinking?
No, go ahead.
What's she thinking? So, I heard you say about the local businesses. Don't get me wrong. I love support businesses in High Springs. But just what if I had that $500? I'm trying to make that $500 was I needed to go. And if I could go to Lowe's and get that paint cheaper and more material, so you tell me I can't go there and buy my material?
Well, I believe personally, this is my personal opinion, that reinvesting in the businesses in our CRA district is a good policy for us to have. And I did speak to the owner of one of them, and I spoke to the owner of the other one, but he's not the owner anymore. And they were willing to work some sort of a program and possibly discount so that they could be part of this as well. But those steps to actually set that up weren't put in place because we weren't at this point yet to determine exactly what we were going to do with the grants. So I agree with you. I understand what you're saying, but I feel strongly that, you know, it's important that we set an example of reinvesting in our community and businesses. That's my personal opinion.
If they're willing to do that and work with them, that's...
You know, if that were to change, we could reevaluate that part of it. We could certainly reevaluate that if we felt like that was a deterrent, you know, or they wouldn't work with us. Maybe this new owner of ACE may have a different opinion, you know, and we certainly wouldn't want to penalize people, you know, for and not be able to utilize that for the best good. Do you have an opinion on that, Christina?
As far as local business owners? The only thing that might, I know we were talking about, you know, some of these other programs that provide paint. You know, it could also go for labor. But I think it's a great idea to support the local businesses. most, I think a chamber, a lot of chambers have like figures, like, for every dollar invested, you get $1.50 back or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, there's definite benefits for, keeping it in town.
But again, if I've got $500, on a tight budget, they can get it at place. I guess I can come back to the board and say, these are the figures I've got, and I can save this much money if I go to Lowe's, or, I guess they would have that recourse. If
I'm sure you're gonna have some customers that's gonna see it that way too.
Yeah.
The more they can get for their dollar,
You're
that's
right.
what they're gonna be looking for.
Right. And I understand what you were saying as far as reinvesting in the community. I understand that. But when you're one person trying to get as much done as you can with the money that you have, that's an important part of it. Most people
I
do
agree,
that.
because I'm the only person paying bills in my house, so I understand that totally.
We typically go and look for bargains and then I heard y'all talking the other night about paint that's given away in the city of
Right.
Gainesville, and that's a marvelous program that they had. I've known about it
And-
for years, but I forgot about it.
And so maybe we need to go ahead and put a sheet on this application to let them know that there is free paint available at that location, because I didn't know about it.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think we need to add that to the grant application, because I didn't know about it, and then they could use this money for other parts of the expense.
Right.
If they can get the paint free, they can get the brushes and the rollers and the whatever else they need to do that.
Maybe we could even work something like there's a price match type of thing,
Right.
It's not a fact.
You mean for
I'm-
the locals?
I'm happy.
That would be fine.
I'm happy to go and talk to them and ask
Yeah.
them if they would be willing to do that.
Okay.
Okay? So,
Oh, sorry. I thought of my question.
go ahead, go, tell us quickly.
I wrote it down.
Quickly.
Do they need to have someone look at their house before painting is done to make sure it's pressure washed, ready for paint? Is there a procedure that's going to be set up, or is it like having Bill take a look at it and make sure everything is good?
It would be a good idea, and Gainesville does that. They do a quick inspection.
Yeah.
So.
Is that going to put a burden on Bill to add that to his schedule? I don't know. I know he's getting pretty busy.
Yeah, I'm not sure it would take Bill.
Okay.
Really, I really think
Someone
the
else.
director can look at a house and
Okay.
say, yep,
Okay.
it's ready to paint.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
The application specifically mentions inspection upon completion, but it doesn't say anything about inspection otherwise.
I mean, if somebody could paint it without having pressure wash, that's a big difference. How it's going.
So could you add something to the application that they need to contact you when they're done pressure washing, so you can just drive by there and check and make sure that it's been cleaned up? And that would be on all of the paint ones, I guess. Is that
Sure.
okay
I
if we
would
do
think
that?
so.
Okay. Okay. So any other discussion on the applications, the limits, the criteria, anything involved with these grant applications? Do we have a motion to approve them as amended, or anything?
You want a motion to approve all three of them with the amendment that we, okay, then I'll make such a motion that these three applications be approved with these amendments that we've recommended tonight.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. The motion carries. Okay. Thank you for your work on that. That was a lot of work.
Good job, though.
Number 5, consider motion to postpone grant applications to the next CRA board meeting for the following. A, First Presbyterian, which is a nonprofit grant. B, Jody's Beauty and Barbershop, which is a commercial grant. and C, Jerry Gardner, which is a residential grant. And we saw 2 of those applications at some meeting we had.
Last meeting we had.
The last one, okay.
Yeah. The First Presbyterian Church and Joseph Beauty and Barbershop.
So
you just want to postpone them?
Till August 2nd?
Yeah, and I'll have a staff report for each one.
Okay, then we'll make a motion to postpone these 3 applications, First Presbyterian, Jody's Beauty and Barbershop, and Jerry Gardner, until our next meeting on August the 2nd.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries to postpone these until the August 2nd meeting. All right, number 6, consider approval of a budget amendment to transfer funds for the consultant to complete the finding of necessity for the CRA boundary and plan extension and revision. I'm going to turn that over to you.
Yeah, this is the item that's already been approved. This is when we have the contract. We are seeking a budget amendment to take from the downtown parking project, since we're near the end of the fiscal year, and this will allow us to get the finding of necessity and to get the CRA plan and extension in place.
Okay. And so does that go into like a separate category then? How do they categorize that? Is it administrative? How does it, this 15,000 end up looking on the budget?
Professional services, yeah.
Okay.
But it's important. I mean, we have to have this in order to, to do this extension. So.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
Before you do that, where you say we're going to take this $15,000 from?
The downtown parking project.
The farmer's market was going to have a parking lot to it, and it still will.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of doing it this year, we'll do it next year.
Okay.
And I understand that they're coming to an agreement about the rails to trails.
Mm-hmm.
And so as that comes in, we'll put that as part of the brick and mortar projects that we're going to do. We'll also look at maybe a miniature park in front of the office over there, which would go in with the rails to trails and all.
Okay.
Your manager's right. We met with Christina yesterday morning, and Rich followed up. I don't know if you're referring to this part of the follow-up, but Rich followed up to research what's going on with that lawsuit between CSX and Loncala. And the federal judge just entered, Rich found it this afternoon, that the federal judge entered a summary judgment on behalf of the CSX. So now that who owns the property has been determined.
Right.
I think Rich also said that the appellate time is run, so that the order's done now, and that should open us up to buying the property and moving forward and getting this project online now finally.
The county is keeping up with that, and I know they want to move forward, because we've been holding off on that for quite a while.
I actually reached out to Chris Dawson. Sue Weller gave me his name, and he told me that, but he also said that the mitigation piece, they should have some final answers by the end of July.
Yeah.
So they're getting close to being able to move forward on that closure. So.
Well, that's very good news.
It is for us.
Yeah.
It has. That was one part of the puzzle to get that farmer's market gazebo or whatever we call
Structure.
Structure done, because the 200,000 is still this the Rural Development Agency still holds it. They haven't given it back yet, so we might get it yet.
All right.
So, do we want to make a motion on approving the budget amendment to?
Well, I made a motion for everything else. I might as well.
Keep on rolling.
All right. Okay. I make a motion that the $15,000 that's required for the finding of necessity study be approved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. The motion carries. All right, then set meeting date schedule for the remainder of the fiscal year. So we're doing August 2nd, and when do you want to go after that?
September 6th, I'm hoping that GAI can join us for that one and present the findings.
September 6th. Okay.
At 6:30?
That would be fine, yeah.
September 6th. August 2nd, and then
September 6th at 6:30.
And then do you want to go into October, or you want to, what do you want to do?
That's probably good because if we can get everything in place and meet with the county, then, we can choose whichever first of the month is fine with me. I don't know if you all have a preference, but, not first of the month, the first Thursday is fine, but, at that time, if you all want to revisit it then, or we can just go ahead and take that for the rest of the year. We can look at in case there's any holidays, but I don't think there's any holidays coming, so.
Not at the beginning of the month. We wouldn't run into holidays.
That first Thursday is a busy day for me, but the rest of you can decide. That's a full day for me.
Do you want to discuss it at the September 6th meeting for the balance of the year? Can we do that for the last quarter? Okay, so we'll put that on the agenda for the September meeting to set dates for October, November, December. Is that okay? All right, do we need to do, we don't need to do a motion on that, do we?
No.
Attorney Walker, do we need to make a motion to set those dates or no?
It wouldn't hurt.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion? Come on. Commissioner Jones is going to do it.
Right, I'm trying to get back to the practice of it. It's been a while. I would make a motion that we will meet again on September 6th at 6:30. At that point, we will set the schedule for the rest of the year.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that motion carries. And I'll just clarify, we do have a meeting August 2nd already set up.
Right.
You're right.
Okay,
Yes.
so just so we know that that's
right.
already
It's
set
right.
up. We had already discussed that. Okay. Then number 8 is the thing that we added to the agenda, which is directing the city manager to enter into this agreement for the finding of necessity. Do we have any discussion, questions, comments?
Well, since we just transferred the phones, I guess he could go to work. You need a motion for that one?
I move that we approve and authorize Mr. Booth to approve the contract for funding of necessity by GAI.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Okay. Then discussion items. Number 1 on here is the fiscal year 2018-19 CRA budget and construction projects, and that's going to be.
Yeah, this is the time of year now where we're setting the budget, the things that are going to happen within the next fiscal year. Jennifer and I are beginning to have a conversation of, what are the priorities, and based on the feedback from the county, there is a strong emphasis on construction projects. And with that, in addition to the market pavilion, the number of lots that we have, we would like to see some partnerships with different organizations to begin to do some workforce and affordable housing, and also, of course, we're looking to do some community outreach. We have an organization in town that does a tremendous amount of business assisting those in need. We actually have Belle here this evening. They provide about $500,000 in services and goods to the community. So if we could, this is the time to talk about projects. Could we do a community center? What are our priorities coming for the next year? We want to set these projects in place now, so that when we go in and speak with the county, we show these are our bricks and mortar projects. These are our community service projects. This is how we're going to improve, the redevelopment in a number of ways. And especially we have a real opportunity for workforce and affordable housing, especially over the next 3 years if we do receive an additional 52 lots. So there's a tremendous opportunity to have a real impact. And I think with all of those things together, our presentation to the county should be very impressive.
So we hope that the Farmers Market Pavilion is going to be on next year as a project, and we're hoping that that comes to fruition or at least gets started. So that's going to be on the list of projects, and associated parking downtown to accommodate that. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. That was part of the project.
Okay.
That was our portion, doing the parking lot.
Right.
And giving the land.
Okay. Okay, so what are your recommendations concerning the bricks and mortar or construction projects?
Well, at this time, I just want us to have a discussion. If there's any other projects or any ideas that anybody else might have, just to have this conversation. This is, an item, this is a discussion item. So, this week, whenever we're working on those things more closely, we can have that in mind, how we can really achieve those goals and have an impressive presentation, and, with the county, we can also do great things. This is the time when we set the stage for the whole next year.
Okay. Mr. Lee, I know you had something you spoke to me about for the Catherine Taylor Park. Do you want to talk to the board about that? The idea that you had for a place where there could be music in the park? Could you come up to the microphone so we can hear you well and tape your voice?
My name's Raymond Lee, 23014 Northwest 178th Place, High Springs, Florida. My thought was since we have music in the park everywhere, all around town, was to have a stage like built on the back of the pavilion so that we could actually have music in our park change. I mean, we have it all over town, and I know that Michael Loveday, he is the provider of all these bands and musicians that comes into town. So unless we have a place for them to come, I consider our side of town as beautiful too. So unless we can get people to come by there and see what the businesses that we do have, there's no other way they come. They know how to get around it, unless we start directing people in that community. So my thought was to put a stage on the back of the pavilion that's there, do something a little bit better with the bathrooms so we can have some ventilation in them, because you go in the restroom, they are very, very hot, even for a short time. We could put some kind of I want to say canopy over the top of the stage, to kind of shield the sun, and maybe get some bleachers spread around out in the park side so people have places to sit. This is just some of the ideas I'm thinking of that we could do to help beautify the park and start people to come in that way.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to come forward with ideas, suggestions, needs?
Hello, everybody. Sharon Yago, 21120 Northwest 132nd Lane, High Springs. Belle's being a little shy. So we started some conversations a few weeks ago. First, I sat with Belle, and then we sat with the church, and we had kind of discussed on what the situation was with the outreach program. As some of you know, some of you have been here a really long time, High Springs Social Services started about 20 years ago through a volunteer effort. The city provided a facility, and volunteers ran the program. And the community donated and contributed cash and then in-kind contributions as well. It's grown. It was over in the water tower. Now it's over here behind Ace Hardware. It was 700 square feet. They need about 2,500 square feet to do the business that they're doing right now. We were able to meet with United Way today with Christina. She was kind enough to bring the new CEO from United Way in the region. We were able to visit with her. So we're looking at a lot of programs, a lot of funding that's going to be made available. I had approached Bell because I had been on the Alachua County CAP Board before, which is the Community Agency Partnership Grant Program. And I was on one of the advisory boards to advise for those grants, and I knew that what they're doing here qualified, but they'd never applied. A lot of the community organizations in High Springs don't really understand the access that they have to programs, to taxpayer dollars in Alachua County for grant programs, TDC, cultural arts, and CAP. So this has been one of my kind of little stick in my craw a little bit for us not applying for these kinds of money. And I really want to see this organization and this program grow. St. Madeline's Church has been funding it and backing it since Catholic Charities bailed on us a few years ago. But the church diocese has recently made a decision to reduce their funding for this program by 50%. So starting July 1st, it's at $15,000 versus $30,000 last year in the previous 5 years. So we have a deficit financially that we're going to have to look at. The church is picking it up right now, but in 2 years, July 1st, 2020, $15,000 goes down to zero. So this program is at risk at this point financially, and so I wanted to sit down with Christina and talk to the city, talk to Ed a little bit, talk to Commissioner Lavin a little bit about it, and I think as the United Way lady said, we are in a perfect storm. There are wonderful programs and wonderful things that are happening in our region that we're going to be able to bring to this program. This program serves about 6 counties. We have statistics. Our volunteers do an amazing job in collecting the data. I've got file folders full of numbers that Alachua County is going to be very surprised to see. I think we have about 12,000 individuals that this program serves every year, and that in 6 counties. Columbia County isn't providing any support for this program. Alachua County isn't providing any support for this program, and neither are the other counties. So what we want to do is put the organization in a position to request funding, to showcase what they're doing, to show the numbers, and then really make sure we shore it up so that we're not going to have a deficit in the next year or 2 years or 3 years, as well as looking at the facilities that are going to be needed. If you go in there for services, there is absolutely no privacy. And Bell's office not only serves as the case manager's office, as the administrative office, as the record-keeping office, bookkeeping office, and then they've got rooms where they have food storage, they have clothing storage, they do so many different things. The list of services that they provide to this county is this long. And to our community, whether it's Fort White or Bell or High Springs or Alachua, I mean, they're serving all of those communities. They don't advertise, they don't promote their services, but people find them. What we need to do is probably really revisit that, because people need to know about them. And once we start putting them in a position where they can request the funding and resources from other organizations, we will be able to do that. But then more people are going to find out about it, and we're going to be serving more people. So we need a bigger place already. If we get through this process, we're going to need a bigger place because we know that the need is out there, and we're going to be serving those additional people. But they're also going to be coming to High Springs. So that's kind of where we're at. The church is ready to help and whatever they can do. I think the city is in a good position to do so as well. And we're positioning the organization to reach out and touch all those other communities and government agencies and other resources so we can start getting these guys shored up. Belle, did I miss anything? Come on, you have to. I knew I'd get you up here.
I can't talk in the microphone.
Okay.
But when we opened up SMCO, which is San Marela Community Outreach, we were serving 250 families. Now it's over 1,400 families. So it has grown. And we just think about each other. You were there today. It's just, are we going to And thank you to the city because they always provide us with the building.
Right.
Thank you.
So historically, the city has always
Yes.
provided the facilities for this program, which is why we came to the CRA with all the exciting opportunities that you guys are looking at. You have any questions? Are there questions?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Would you like to share about the meeting you had with Dr. Mona? Because wasn't that part of the bigger plan?
Yeah, so as part of that, there is an area in Gainesville that's called the Linton Oaks area. Recently, the county partnered with United Way and a number of different agencies, and they rehabilitated 2 quadruplexes, and they created this, it's called the SWAG Resource Center. And anyway, they suggested that we take a look at that. But, thinking about, the things we've talked about before with computer labs, facilities that also serve youth, in the community and whatnot, I was just wondering if, maybe there's some opportunity where we can kind of, think about a project that would serve these needs, at least in the interim. I mean, maybe someday we build this, on Railroad Avenue, but right now this is something we could do, keep it going and address those needs and provide computers and other things that are needed in the interim. So, this is the time, if this is something, even within a 3-year horizon, I think it's a good thing to start planning for. And, but, as far as the program, they're on a 2-year window. And so, there are other properties in town we could look at using maybe in the meantime, like Dr. Mona Gilda-Gabaha from the CEO of United Way. She's going to reach out to her contacts throughout the community, see if there's a commercial entity that might, donate a building temporarily. So there's other resources that they're looking at as well. And but as far as like the level of impact and the things that, this is something that the county has gotten behind on projects in Gainesville, and partially because there was a professor from the University of Florida that did this density study and looked at concentrations of anything from poverty to crime or any number of different factors. And they found 4 sites where they put these resource centers. And so they've really done a wonderful job addressing these needs by creating these resource centers. And so something, since we're kind of in an outerlying area, but being at these affordable housing meetings and whatnot, they know the needs there, and there's a lot of interest in expanding out this way. And I think this is another way we could maybe connect and partner and really make an impact, in addition to, the workforce and affordable housing that we're looking at doing, and, larger scope redevelopment. So, and then, these are the things that, I hope that we can consider, moving forward with, presenting to the county, that I think that will really make an impact and show that we're really taking this seriously. So.
Do you want us to look at doing something in the next budget year? Do you want us to do a recommendation, or where are we at? What are you asking
Well,
for?
I think at this time, just maybe to set, even just talk about prior, just for note-taking purposes, this is a discussion item, and the budget's going to be workshopped, and, as part of the city council meetings, and so at this time here, just to have that conversation, and to see if there's any other things in the meantime. I mean, I think that's pretty ambitious to have right now already. And it's very fortunate that the Market Pavilion seems to be coming online very nicely. And then also too, looking at some of these projects for workforce and affordable housing. And then also, a community center of some sort where we could combine maybe, different angles of like anything from computer labs to, of course, the pantry and, maybe even after school programs or something, so. And then, of course, Mr. Lee suggested, these are all things, it's a good time to start looking at, the priorities of where we can make sure.
I was approached a couple months ago about the volleyball team that we have. They don't really have facilities to practice in or have their games. Is that something the CRA or something the city would be involved with?
That's a recreation board, and I think they're looking at that.
Are they? Okay. Thank you.
I know that this agency does amazing things with the very limited resources and space they have. I've seen firsthand, the help that they give. And, I think that the city has done a really good job of being supportive of that, by allowing them to use the building. I don't know, the logistics of a CRA funding, a building like that or being partner. That's something you'd have to direct us on because we don't have that, I don't have that knowledge, or how to even approach any kind of suggestion because it's such a bigger picture.
And this, I think, would be something to take to a working group at the county. Maybe we talk about that before we do our big presentation.
Okay.
And kind of get their feedback as well.
Okay. Because, some of the people in the Douglas community have talked to me about having a place where people could get training on how to do resumes and be prompted on how to go to a job interview. Having those after-school programs for older kids, not just the small children, because then you keep them out of trouble because you have them engaged, whether it's they're working on homework and having some tutors there, or we have an opportunity here to help really change the face of our community by having these services. So I think that partnering with the other agencies and being part of that would be definitely something that, I personally would be behind. I don't know about the board.
I think there would be some things that we would do. I would, anyway, love to work towards supporting. We need things for our children to do, as you said, not just the small ones, but the older ones as well, because there's nothing right now that they could get involved in. So we definitely need that. That's for certain.
Like I said, what's going to happen to the Santa Fe Community College? Some of the courses they used to give.
They still teach courses. Unfortunately, they weren't kind of the courses we wanted to see, for resumes and how to present yourself and how to do interviews and that. They kind of gone to the more fluffy type of artsy.
They're doing community ed courses is what
Yeah.
they're doing. They're doing the photography classes or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe, the SCORE program, maybe there's something we could do there. In terms of, but I'm wondering, like for bricks and mortar, are we lacking in facilities for these types of things? Like, if we were to have like youth and after school programs, is there a facility? Is there, that's kind of where, do we need to find something in the interim, like before we build? I mean, maybe, in the next fiscal year we could look at building something, but in the meantime, how do we address these needs? Are there existing facilities that would do just that? So, just kind of,
Didn't we have some buildings that we were considering looking at one time for after-school activities? I thought there was a building along 441 there someplace that there was some discussion on. Okay. Maybe I'm confusing something else. I thought it was. Okay.
There's nothing in there. There's no.
Right.
this is
Okay.
All right.
It's probably something you have to build.
Yeah, and so like as far as with the plan, I mean, we'll have these workshops in, the next coming month, and we'll get to talk about more specifics. But this time, just having some broad general categories to kind of direct that to make sure we have that there as, that we become online, or the ability to make those things happen.
And so they're looking, Sharon or Belle, you're looking at, somebody said that you need 2,500 square feet at this point versus the 700 square feet that you're currently using.
And the United Way folks suggested we go toward WAG because they just, the county just funded their, and they retrofitted these two buildings. So
they strongly encourage us to look at that as a layout. Because those folks, they know all these people, but
Do you have contacts with them, with the people that did this way?
And Gary Hankins?
yeah, she gave us,
Okay.
everybody wants to go down and tour.
Let's go see how they got the money.
Well, they,
I was about to ask.
I believe the land was donated by a generous anonymous donor. The county put in,
$1.5 million, I think.
I mean, what they purchased some and then, because we looked at, there were 3 projects, 3 different, of these kinds of centers around Alachua County. Swag one, I think part of the land was donated, and I'm not really sure how it was, but the county paid for it. You know, the county paid for it.
Okay. Well, if we can get them to pay for it, I'm behind it.
Well, but the thing is that nobody's really looked at this part of the county.
Right.
Nobody's really evaluated the need. And it would be a multi-county proposal.
Right.
But the good news is that United Way is a multi-county agency. So she's willing to really work with us and govern that conversation. If she is here.
Okay.
Mr. Booth, how far CRA district go on 441?
How far down does it go?
Yeah.
It's like a street.
This side of the church.
First Baptist? That's your 90?
Yeah.
No, I think that's the highway enhancement zone, isn't it?
St. Bart?
Not CR.
Yeah, the CRA doesn't go too far down.
Yeah.
I don't know how far it goes down that way. We don't know. We're not. Jenna, I know where to what to see that. The reason I asked that question is,
She's got a map right there for us, see? God bless her.
The reason I asked that question is,
Right
there's
there.
an old building that's been sitting there for years. The old, used to be like a little motel there. I'm talking about.
Yes, the one at the corner of the old 5th Street, because it was at the end of my street. The gentleman was the old postmaster. I know exactly where you're talking.
Yeah.
Next to the diner.
Next to the diner. Yes.
Right before the diner.
Yeah.
I know exactly where you're talking.
Yeah.
Garrett Busby has that up for sale. Dean Davis is the realtor. So.
That just entered my mind, that old building.
Right,
there.
right. The old motel out there, it was the motel on the right by the diner on 441. There's a motel building in the back and a house structure, but it's a very large parcel of land. It's a huge parcel of land. So I have no idea. We could certainly explore that, because it's got parking and a big piece of land there.
That might be the building I was thinking of. I don't know, and I said 441 when I was talking, but I thought I had remember some discussion on a building that might be used for that. And that was probably it. I just replaced it.
It's an old building.
I would guess that it's probably priced high because it's been on the market a long time.
What it used to be, John? What it used to be?
Motel.
Motel.
Yeah. Which one used to be? You remember?
I don't know. I know where it is. I know what it was. I don't know the name.
I don't either.
It's an old building though.
It is.
Price of it?
Huh?
Price of it?
What is it?
325.
325.
And one suggestion, somebody asked about the Lone Cala building, about that maybe being a possibility, or at least the community outreach portion. But, there's other things. I mean, we can look around and see them, like, Dr. Gildigo Baja has that list. She's also going to put out and see if any commercial business owners in town have anything available. They might even be willing to donate. There's a couple different options to look at.
Okay.
Just the important thing is to set the stage for that to happen.
Okay. All right. Any other budget or construction project discussion that you want to have with us? No? Okay. So we'll move on. I don't really have a report. I think we've talked about everything that needs to be talked about. So I'll move on to Executive Director's report and go down the list of A, B, C, D, E.
So last night we had the Downtown Merchants meeting. We've had a number of things in the way of marketing. Actually, the Chamber just did a really nice 3-minute segment on CBS about the city and partnering with some of the businesses downtown and CRA. The merchants, we're getting ready to do a series of First Fridays, the August one looking at giving away Springs trip and whatnot, and then of course our bigger one in October. The Chamber has come forward with the possibility of maybe partnering with us on that one, so that's very exciting. Of course, we have music in the park, and we have Folk in the Springs coming up September 16th. And as far as a walking tour, we're looking to work with potentially an Eagle Scout who might develop that for us. Also looking at on the front end of that, maybe getting the museum and the silvicultural folks involved. So it should be real fun. And then as far as community outreach and collaboration, basically I was going to mention about our meeting today, and but just a lot of great things in the works, a lot of partnerships, everybody's working together really well, and it's exciting to see some of these different things starting to come together with the Chamber and different organizations throughout the town. And so
the other thing is in September there's going to be a street painting festival with the First Friday event. So they're trying to, the merchants that have been meeting are trying to put together that and have youth and teens and professional artists and invite some of the nonprofits to do maybe food that you can buy casually versus going to the restaurant. So that'll be happening the first Friday of September, correct? Mm-hmm. Right. So
Street painting.
Mm-hmm. Well, sidewalk painting, I guess.
Oh, okay,
sidewalk painting. Sorry. We don't want them out on. We don't want them on 27 painting for sure. So, okay. Is there anything else?
One question.
Yes, sir.
The old clock. I know we fixed it, Mr. Booth, but that's just not working again.
We'll try again. I'll direct the CRA director to try to figure it out.
the contact, yeah. I'm the guy that calls me every now and then.
It does work twice a day. We can only try.
We spent money to fix that thing, didn't we, Jenny?
Oh, lots.
Yes.
So he didn't give no guarantee?
Is it ants again?
Oh, you know it's not working.
It's 6 hours behind.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, I think we've covered everything we needed to cover. We'll reconvene on August 2nd. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Commissioner Williams is ready to go. Thank you so much. Did you say you're freezing?
It's cold.
Because somebody was complaining.
You're cold. Well, see, I was drinking a lot of lattes, but
I'll talk to you now. It's a little people.
that was from when I first came in.
Okay?